Eyes are glued to the screens for the FIFA World Cup 2026 watching stars, like Kylian Mbappé in Philadelphia, or Lionel Messi's title defense in Dallas. The hype around the beautiful game has never been higher. But history shows us that the tournament's extreme highs come with a terrifyingly dark underbelly. Today, as the world celebrates the pitch, we uncover the moments the sport crossed the line into pure horror. Think about the immense pressure riding on the shoulders of the players competing in the FIFA World Cup group stages right now. One single mistake can mean national embarrassment and elimination. But in the summer of 1994, for Colombian defender Andrés Escobar, it meant a literal death sentence. The Colombian national football team arrived at the 1994 World Cup in the United States as dark horse favorites. They possessed a generation of dazzling talent, and an entire nation looked to them for a brief escape from the violent vacuum left behind by the death of drug kingpin Pablo Escobar. Among them was Andrés Escobar. Known affectionately as the gentleman of the field, Escobar was celebrated for his clean tackling, his calm leadership, and his immaculate integrity. He was on the verge of signing a life-changing contract with Italian giants AC Milan. But on June 22nd, during a critical match against the United States, disaster struck. In the 35th minute, Escobar slid to intercept a pass. The ball ricocheted off his boot, slipped past his own goalkeeper, and rolled into the net. An own goal. Colombia lost the match 2-1 and was shockingly eliminated from the tournament. Escobar was devastated, but he refused to hide. Upon returning to Colombia, he wrote a poignant column for a Bogotá newspaper, telling the public, "Life doesn't end here. We must go on." Tragically, his life would end just days later. On the night of July 2, 1994, Escobar went to a nightclub in his hometown of Medellin. In the early morning hours, as he sat alone in his car in the parking lot, he was surrounded by three men. An argument broke out over the own goal. One man drew a .38 caliber pistol and fired 6 bullets directly into Escobar's chest. Witnesses claim that with every shot, the killer mockingly chanted the words of the South American football commentators, "Gol." The gunman was Humberto Castro Munoz, a bodyguard for powerful drug cartel members who had reportedly lost millions of dollars betting on the World Cup match. Escobar was rushed to the hospital but died 45 minutes later. Over 120,000 people flooded the streets for his funeral. A man of peace, executed for a simple mistake on a patch of grass. Long before the multi-billion-dollar entity of modern FIFA took shape, crime had already found a way to infect the sport's highest echelons. In 1930, FIFA hosted its inaugural World Cup in Uruguay. Leading the French national team onto the pitch as captain was Alexandre Villaplane. He was a midfielder of extraordinary talent, praised across Europe for his vision, his fierce athleticism, and his natural leadership. But Villaplane possessed a fatal flaw, an insatiable greed, and an utter lack of morality. Off the pitch, he frequented the criminal underworld of Paris, becoming heavily involved in illegal horse race fixing, smuggling, and fraud. When World War II broke out and Nazi Germany occupied France, Villaplane saw an opportunity not to defend his country, but to profit from its destruction. He joined the infamous Carling, a French Gestapo unit made up of criminals, collaborators, and mercenaries hired by the Nazis to hunt down resistance fighters and systematically extort Jewish families. Villaplane rose through the ranks to command the North African Brigade, a paramilitary group that terrorized the French countryside. Villaplane became a monster. He personally oversaw mass executions, ordered citizens to be burned alive, and amassed a fortune by taking bribes from desperate people looking to escape death, only to betray them to the Nazis anyway. A fellow officer later remarked that Villaplane would watch people bleed out with a cold smile, calculating how much gold he could steal from their pockets. But justice eventually came for the former captain. Following the liberation of Paris in 1944, Villaplane was captured by French forces. Stripped of his athletic legacy and exposed as a ruthless traitor, he was convicted of high treason, war crimes, and mass murder. On December 26, 1944, the man who once proudly wore the captain's armband for France was tied to a post at the Fort de Montrouge and executed by a firing squad. His name was forever erased from the honors of French football. In Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the passion for football is woven into the very fabric of daily life. For many young men in the favelas, the sport is a golden ticket out of poverty. João Rodrigo Silva Santos was one of those men. He enjoyed a successful professional career as a forward, playing for several clubs including Bangu, Madureira, and even playing abroad in Sweden and Honduras. Upon retiring from professional football, João was determined to build a quiet, honest life. He opened a successful health food store in the Realengo neighborhood of Rio, becoming a beloved fixture in his community. He was happily married to Gaetjens Silva, a dedicated police officer. But Gaetjens wasn't just any police officer, she was a member of Rio's police pacifying unit, a specialized task force assigned to enter the city's most dangerous favelas and wrest control away from the ruthless drug cartels. Because of her job, João and his wife lived with a permanent target on their backs. On the night of October 28, 2013, as João was closing his shop and walking to his car, he was ambushed. Armed men forced him into the back of a vehicle and sped off into the night. His family spent hours in agonizing suspense, praying for a ransom demand. At 6 a.m. the following morning, Gaetjens heard a rustling outside their home. She stepped out onto the front porch and noticed a backpack sitting on the steps. When she opened it, she was met with a scene of absolute horror. Inside was the severed head of her husband. His eyes had been gouged out and his tongue removed. The drug traffickers had brutally tortured and murdered the former footballer, using his body to send a sickening, unmistakable message to his police officer wife and the authorities. The sheer brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through Brazil, highlighting the terrifying reality of a society where not even retired sports heroes are safe from the lawless cruelty of the cartels. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s gave rise to a wild, unregulated capitalist frontier in Russia. Massive wealth flooded the country, and with it came the Russian Mafia, who quickly realized that the booming domestic football market was a perfect vehicle for money laundering and extortion. This was the dangerous environment navigated by Yuri Tishkov. Tishkov had been a sensational young striker for Torpedo Moscow and Dynamo Moscow, but a catastrophic leg injury prematurely ended his playing career. Blessed with a sharp mind, he pivoted, becoming a highly respected, charismatic TV football commentator and one of Russia's first officially licensed FIFA player agents. Tishkov was known for his fierce loyalty to his clients. He refused to cooperate with the criminal syndicates that demanded a cut of player transfer fees. He wanted to clean up the corrupt landscape of Russian sports. But in doing so, he stepped on the toes of incredibly dangerous men. On January 11, 2003, the 31-year-old Tishkov was returning home late at night. As he walked toward the entrance of his Moscow apartment building, he was ambushed in the dark. The attack was frenzied and incredibly violent. Tishkov was stabbed over 30 times with a specialized blade. When his body was discovered by his mother shortly after, investigators noted a crucial detail. Tishkov was carrying a briefcase containing thousands of dollars in cash, and he was wearing expensive jewelry. None of it was taken. This was not a robbery gone wrong. It was a professional, targeted execution. Investigators strongly suspected that Tishkov's murder was ordered by powerful mob-linked figures over a high-stakes dispute regarding the transfer of a prominent young player. Despite extensive promises of a thorough investigation by the Russian authorities, a wall of silence fell over the case. To this day, the masterminds behind Yuri Tishkov's murder have never been brought to justice, leaving his death a chilling testament to the mafia's iron grip on the sport during that era. For smaller footballing nations, qualifying for a FIFA World Cup is a monumental achievement that can define a generation. Today, as the Panama national team battles underdogs and giants alike across the pitches of the current tournament, they carry a profound historical weight. They aren't just playing for a trophy. They are carrying the legacy of Amilcar Henriquez. Henriquez was a veteran, hard-tackling midfielder who had earned 75 caps for his country. He was the emotional heartbeat of the locker room, known for his relentless work ethic and his dedication to mentoring younger players. But Henriquez hailed from the city of Colón, a vital port town plagued by severe gang violence, territorial drug wars, and a high homicide rate. On April 15, 2017, just months before Panama would seal their first-ever historic World Cup qualification, Henriquez was taking a break from his grueling training schedule. He was sitting on a sidewalk just outside his home, playing a relaxed game of dominoes with his close friends. It was an ordinary peaceful afternoon. Suddenly, a red Nissan vehicle pulled up to the curb. A gunman stepped out, drew a firearm, and without warning, opened fire directly at Henriquez. The midfielder attempted to run, but he was struck multiple times by a hail of bullets. The shooter jumped back into the car and sped away. Henriquez was rushed to a nearby hospital, but his wounds were fatal. He was just 33 years old. The assassination plunged the entire nation of Panama into deep mourning. Police eventually arrested several gang members linked to a notorious local syndicate, revealing that Henriquez was targeted as part of a localized gangland hit. He built the foundation of Panamanian football, but was executed before he could ever witness his nation's global rise. When we think of dangers to football players, we often look outside the stadium walls. But in August 2014, inside the Stade One or Novembre in Algeria, the danger materialized directly on the pitch, leading to one of the most controversial and highly contested deaths in modern sports history. Ebosse was a powerful 24-year-old Cameroonian striker playing for Algerian club JS Kabylie. He was a phenomenal talent, finishing the previous season as the league's top goalscorer. He was adored by many, but Algerian football culture is notorious for its extreme fan radicalism, where ultragroups frequently riot over poor team performances. On August 23, JS Kabylie suffered a bitter 2-1 home defeat to their rivals, despite Ebosse scoring his team's only goal. As the referee blew the final whistle, the stadium erupted in fury. Angry fans began hurling rocks, batteries, and concrete chunks down at their own players as they retreated toward the locker room tunnel. Amidst the chaos, Albert Ebosse collapsed. Hours later, he was pronounced dead. The initial official report released by Algerian authorities claimed that Ebosse had been struck in the head by a sharp piece of slate thrown from the stands, causing a fatal skull fracture. It was framed as a tragic random act of stadium hooliganism. However, Ebosse's family suspected a cover-up. They refused to accept the official narrative and requested an independent autopsy upon his body's return to Cameroon. The results of that second autopsy completely shattered the Algerian government's story. The independent medical examiners found no evidence of a skull fracture caused by a flying object. Instead, they discovered a series of horrifying injuries: a ruptured cervical vertebra, a severely fractured shoulder blade, and deep gouges indicating a fierce struggle. The autopsy concluded that Ebosse did not die from a random projectile thrown from the stands. He had been brutally assaulted in the tunnel or the locker room, sustaining fatal blunt force trauma from a close-range beating. To this day, the true identity of Ebosse's attackers remains shrouded in a wall of institutional silence and systemic denial, leaving a cloud of dark mystery over the night a star striker was killed inside his own sanctuary. In October 2014, South African football was riding a wave of immense pride. The national team, the Bafana Bafana, was led by their brilliant 27-year-old goalkeeper and captain, Senzo Meyiwa. Meyiwa was a national icon, a man whose spectacular athletic saves and infectious charisma made him a hero to millions of young children across the country. But on the night of October 26, 2014, that pride turned into collective national trauma. Meyiwa was visiting his girlfriend, the famous South African pop star Kelly Khumalo, at her mother's house in Vosloorus, a township just south of Johannesburg. A group of friends were gathered inside the home, enjoying a relaxed evening. Suddenly, the peace was shattered. Two armed men breached the house, demanding cell phones, money, and valuables. A chaotic struggle broke out as Meyiwa bravely moved forward to protect his girlfriend and the other occupants from the intruders. During the physical altercation, a gunshot rang out. Meyiwa was struck directly in the chest. The intruders fled into the dark night, taking nothing but a single cell phone. Meyiwa was rushed to the hospital but was tragically pronounced dead on arrival. The murder of the active national team captain shocked South Africa to its core, prompting immediate outpourings of grief from FIFA officials and global sports stars. But the tragedy quickly transformed into a complex, exhausting legal saga. For years, the investigation stalled, plagued by rumors of a botched police response, witness manipulation, and high-level conspiracies. It took nearly 6 years of relentless public pressure before police made a major breakthrough. 5 suspects, all alleged hitmen linked to organized crime syndicates, were arrested and put on trial. The prosecution argued a chilling theory that the incident may not have been a random robbery gone wrong, but a meticulously planned contract killing. The trial gripped South Africa for years, exposing the deep, painful intersection of celebrity culture, violent crime, and the long, agonizing walk toward justice. The year was 1950. The setting was Belo Horizonte, Brazil. The United States national team, a ragtag group of part-time amateur players, pulled off what is still considered the greatest upset in FIFA World Cup history, defeating the heavily favored English team 1-0. The lone, historic goal was scored by Joe Gaetjens, a Haitian-born forward who was studying in New York and playing football to support himself. Gaetjens was carried off the field on the shoulders of ecstatic fans. He had secured permanent football immortality. A few years later, Gaetjens returned to his beloved homeland of Haiti, where he opened a successful dry cleaning business and continued to play the sport he loved. He was a pure sportsman, entirely detached from politics. But Haiti in the late 1950s and 60s had entered a dark age, ruled by the paranoid, brutal dictator François Papa-Doc Duvalier. Duvalier maintained his iron grip on the country through the Tonton Makuta, feared, ruthless secret police force that specialized in torture, political assassinations, and enforcing terror. While Joe Gaetjens stayed far away from politics, his extended family did not. His brothers were actively involved in political opposition groups trying to overthrow the Duvalier regime. In the eyes of a paranoid dictator, association by blood was a death sentence. On the morning of July 8, 1964, the Tonton Macoute pulled up to Gaetjens' dry cleaning shop. They forced the World Cup hero into the back of a car at gunpoint. Gaetjens turned to a bystander and calmly said, "Don't worry, I haven't done anything wrong. They just want to ask some questions." He was driven directly to Fort de Manche, a notorious political prison where thousands of dissidents were systematically tortured and executed. Joe Gaetjens was never seen alive again. He completely vanished from the face of the earth. His body was never recovered, and his exact date of death remains unknown. A global sporting hero, wiped from existence by the cold machine of political tyranny. Our next case brings us back to South Africa, a nation where the profound brilliance of footballing talent is constantly forced to contend with an environment of rampant economic hardship and hyper-violent crime syndicates. This is the tragic story of Lwazim Zozoyana. Zozoyana was a highly promising, technically gifted midfielder who worked his way up through the grueling youth academies of South Africa to play in the country's elite Premier Soccer League, most notably representing Chippa United. He was known as a player who possessed an immense footballing IQ, a quiet professional demeanor, and a bright future in the domestic game. But the transition from a rising star to a long-term professional is a fragile path, especially when navigating communities heavily dominated by ruthless street gangs and criminal elements who look at young athletes as lucrative targets for financial extortion. In 2021, Zozoyana suddenly disappeared. He missed scheduled team training sessions and his phone went completely dead, plunging his family, teammates, and coaches into a state of panic. For days, desperate search parties scoured his community, holding onto the hope that he had simply gone offline. Those hopes were brutally crushed when local police made a devastating discovery. Zozoyana's body was found dumped in a dense patch of bush in Gakerha. An initial forensic examination revealed that the young midfielder had been shot multiple times in a brutal, cold-blooded execution. The investigation quickly revealed that this was not a random act of street violence. Zozoyana had been targeted by a local criminal gang, caught up in a localized web of extortion and violence that frequently preys upon young, successful figures in the townships. His murder served as a stark, heartbreaking reminder of the immense vulnerabilities faced by athletes who, despite their professional success, remain exposed to the harsh realities of the environments they leave behind. Throughout this journey, we have explored stories where football players, managers, and officials were the tragic victims of external evil. But for our final case, we must look at a story where the evil came from within the sport itself. This is the case of Bruno Fernandes de Souza. In 2010, Bruno was on top of the world. He was the star goalkeeper, captain, and icon of Flamengo, the most popular football club in Brazil. He was widely considered one of the best goalkeepers in the country, on the absolute verge of being called up to the Brazilian national team for the World Cup. and heavily scouted by elite European clubs. He possessed wealth, fame, and immense power. But behind his athletic brilliance lay a terrifying, calculating monster. Bruno had been involved in an extramarital affair with Elisa Samudio, a young Brazilian model. When Elisa became pregnant and gave birth to his son, she demanded child support and threatened to expose the affair to the public, a move that Bruno feared would ruin his lucrative career and reputation. Instead of resolving the issue, Bruno orchestrated an unspeakably horrific plot. In June 2010, Bruno and a group of accomplices, including his cousin and a former corrupt police officer, kidnapped Elisa and her infant son from a hotel. They drove her to a secluded property owned by Bruno. For days, Elisa was held captive and subjected to immense psychological terror. She was eventually strangled to death in front of her 4-month-old baby. But it was what Bruno ordered his accomplices to do next that horrified the entire world. To completely erase any evidence of the crime, Elisa's body was meticulously dismantled, cut into pieces, and fed directly to a pack of Rottweiler dogs, while the remaining parts were buried under concrete. Bruno returned to the football pitch, playing matches as if nothing had happened, coolly telling reporters he hoped Elisa would be found safely, but the walls quickly closed in. His cousin confessed to the police, exposing the entire nightmare. In 2013, Bruno was convicted of ordering the kidnapping, torture, and murder of Elisa Samudio. He was sentenced to over 22 years in prison. The case completely shattered the footballing world, serving as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't hiding in the shadows of the stadium. They are wearing the captain's armband right out on the pitch. 10 stories. 10 lives forever altered or cut short by violence, greed, and tragedy. They serve as a somber reminder that football, for all its beauty, is ultimately a reflection of our world capable of producing both breathtaking inspiration and unfathomable darkness. As you sit back and watch the rest of the high-stakes drama unfold across the matches of the FIFA World Cup this month, remember the names of those who were lost to the deep shadows of the sport. Which of these tragic cases did you find the most shocking? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below to get the discussion going. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dive true crime histories, and thank you for watching.